First of all, I'm really sorry I cannot say almost nothing in Polish, so I hope you understand this. I'm not that smart, so 6 months was not enough for learning Polish. So I'm able and happy to talk to you Facebook or via email, things like this, if it's easier for some of you to write rather than to speak. But in the end of my presentation, you'll be very welcome to ask questions and have some little discussion here. Besides the fact that I'm very honored to have this opportunity to be here speaking to people from this great university, this is my favorite subject. I never feel like I'm working, because if you really love what you do, you are never working, you are developing yourself and having fun. So I'm very happy basically every day, besides from the fact when I have to do some applications for the future projects. So the topic of today is about the 3D printing and new technologies. So I'm going to start telling you a little bit about my background and how I ended up following this path. So basically, how can someone with architectural project background could end up in this mix of biology and structural engineering and mechanical engineering? I don't know if some of you face the same things, but like when you had to decide, in my country, people usually decide when they are 16, 17, and we are just so young. How are you going to decide? How are we going to know how many new things we have in the fields of knowledge? So how did you choose, oh, I want to be an architect, or I want to be an artist? Well, you're kind of born as an artist anyway. But I think that some of you face the same challenge I had when I was young. So we have this in common, probably. So what I love most about my life is checking how the environment changes. So how your garden is never going to be the same garden on the next 5 minutes, or on the next day, or in the next, season. I come from a country. Well, I have the dual citizenship, Brazilian and Italian. But during my childhood, I lived most of the time in Sao Paulo. So this is what my first memories are from the tropical environment, or semi-tropical environment. So we don't really have the winters as you have here, so it's much more mild, but we also don't have very hot summers, so you don't really expect the environment to change that much, but you have the subtle changes. And as a child, I was already very passionate about this. So I am the first daughter of a medical doctor, a dermatologist, and a science teacher. So, I was with microscopes all the time around the house. My dad would take me to his clinic, to his private practice, and I would be there playing with, some of his old instruments that he would not use anymore. So my childhood was between the garden and the lab, basically, and I continue doing this until now in my life. So one of the first things I got very passionate about were the spider webs. So even when people were like, oh, but they are scary, there are all these myths, sometimes not that much myth, it can be also true sometimes, but most the spiders, they are not a threat for you. So I was there all the time, checking how these little animals were building day after day these amazing structures. And you know, they were not selfish, that maybe one day the wind would throw them away, or there was, I don't know, a summer rain, and then it would also be vanished, or at least partially destroyed. So I think I got used to this ephemerality of things. So I was never an architect, you know, later in my life, who wanted to build things that would last forever. You know, forever is too long time. You know, the world has to change. It is in continuation of change, and why are we going to, as humans, try to stop this process, this natural process? So, the first thing I remember, one of the first memories I remember is asking my dad if we didn't see the things, I mean, why we didn't see the things flat. Why, when we look at something and you draw something, the things don't really, they are not really the same. I imagine some of you are, you know, amazing drawers, you know, you make these amazing illustrations. That's not me. So I had to content myself with the 3D worlds. And then after some time in my childhood still, I was thinking, yeah, but you know, this is also changing all the time, so there must be something else in this. And then 20 years after that, I discovered that it would be called generally as, you know, the higher dimensions, especially the 4D. So 4D can be mathematically spoken as number of different ways of checking reality or non-reality, but let's content ourselves here with the change of time, okay? So this is going to lead me to the ultimate topic of my research, which is the 4D printing. This is a gel-like material. It's not really a gel, but it has some of its proper properties, and it has been used lately in the Wiley University in the United States. They are part of the Ivy League that has, for example, the Harvard School in this group of faculties. So they were doing this joint project in the 4D printing. It's not really what I'm doing, but it has some relation, so I'm going to get there. So some slight movements. So getting back to the beginning of the story I was telling you, not all the things in nature have very broad, very wide, great movements, but everything is in a little movement. So I'm very interested in these things. So, and I'm also very interested in the subtle changes in the geometry of things. So if you would normally draw this plant, you would basically do some very straight lines, very probably. But then if you get a microscope, or not even a microscope, even if you get a micro camera, you're going to see that all this texture, they are not only a mere texture, they are another kind of dimension. So I entered into the subject of the fractal structures. I first started studying fractal structures when I was about 15, 16. I got in contact with this via a math teacher. But then when I started my engineering course, I started mechanical engineering course in 1999. So this was the time when I got more deep into the fractal structures. And then eventually part of my doctorate was about the same subject. So what this means? Do you know this broccoli? It's common in some parts of Europe. In Italy, we eat them all the time. But in Sao Paulo, I had never seen this in my life, because we have two different kinds of broccolis, but they don't look like this at all. So this is an example. It's not the mathematical model of the fractal, which means that every little piece of something would have infinitive number of the same structure, of the same geometry pieces, but in a different scale, containing one into the other. So of course, this is going to decrease, let's say, 2, 3 times, 4 times at maximum. It's not going to get smaller, because when you get to the cell, let's say, the cell has another structure, right? So it's not the visual structure you see here, but just for you to have an idea of what I'm talking about, the fractal structures. I could have shown you some examples in the math world, but I want you to get more insight from the nature. And then, if you are curious after this lecture, not after this lecture, tomorrow, because you have to pay attention to the other people, you have a look in the internet to check the fractal structures. And the snowflake, models and things like this. So, how many of you here, I want you to raise your hands, who here wants to really become an architect, to build buildings, houses, concert halls and things like this? Should I ask again, or I got the truth here? Okay, how many of you are interested in modeling these buildings? Not doing the project, but doing the modeling? Not many? How many people want to study the social movements, the art that lied behind these great buildings that you see? So some people that are more related to the history of architecture, history of design. Man, are you in the same? Are you in the right place? Really? Do you study biology maybe, or what is the dream of most of the people that didn't raise their hands for any of the options? So, I think this is a very cute example. This is from Felix Candela. So this guy was the guy to work on concrete shells. So what does this mean? Usually the concrete structures, they are very bulky, they are very let's say, in other words, you see the weight of it. But then here they look so light, don't they? But they are quite strong, of course. If it rains, cats and dogs is still going to be there. How about this? Do you like going to the beach? Yeah, I love going to the beach. Me and the sun, we don't really have a good relationship. But I love going to the beach, especially when the sun is not very strong. So, why do you think that this shell is so strong, even if it's thin? Any ideas?
Right material.
Partially could be from the right material, but it's not the main reason in my perspective.
Shape.
Yes. So basically, shape is what gives the best strength to the structures. So this, of course, if you want to do this with water, then it's not going to work probably. But for example, if you do it with paper, paper is, if you get a sheet of paper, you do like this, it's super flexible. But then if you do it in the right shape, sometimes you can even, do crazy stuff like putting a heavy load on it. So concerning this subject of the materials. The nature doesn't have this super broad range of materials. You know, the nature is very clever to do the right mixes and the right shapes, right? Because you know, how many elements in chemistry do we have? We don't have that many. And even if we have, you know, those many, they are not available everywhere. And everywhere we find many different things, right? So the material is not as important as, you know, we tend to consider them. And the same thing about an egg. So, you know, how strong is an egg to, you know, be able to content this? And the nature is super clever, right? So the nature is not going to leave the egg there, not protected enough so that the life continues. So it has to be protected. There's some great balance between being protected and giving the freedom for this new life that is being bred there, right? So a very cute example of the shape as well. So I didn't put any names in the pictures because they are all pictures I took myself during these years. So you see this super soft bed that lies under this mushroom. Isn't it amazing how much stronger it becomes, you know, because it's so soft, it's so subtle, but then it's quite strong anyway. And then, you know, architects have been trying to do things based on that over the last hundreds of years, millions of years, I would guess. When you go to places, or even if you are in your hometown, do you keep paying attention to the places like, oh, you know, what was the idea this guy had? When you have, how many of you in this room have been to Paris, to the Eiffel Tower? Quite many. Okay, that's good. So use as much as you can this possibility of imagining how things were done, because making sometimes is much more important, you know, than thinking, and then you end up doing nothing, you know. Oh, I have this great dream of doing this. Doesn't it happen to you when you are doing these projects? Oh, you know, the professor said that I should do this. Oh, I'm going to dream 5 months, you know, because I want to do something really great. In the end, you look like, oh my, if you had tried doing very simple, very basic things from the first day, in the end you would have something really amazing. So this is kind of what happened to the Eiffel Tower, and then I'm going to show you some of inspirations from the nature I got. So do you know this building is the Pantheon in Rome, in Italy? And it's based on this animal house, you know, this bird's house. Isn't it amazing? So the quantity of light that goes in, you know, this other beauty. Does anything from the nature remind you of this? Do you have any guesses? No ideas? Bees? Yeah, very good, very good. So, after my doctorate, that was based on these structures that get smaller in the same kind of shape, I did my first postdoc in a new topic. So I was fed up with these fractals. I had studied enough, not enough, but you know, enough is enough. And I went into the wasps, the bees, and the termites. I don't know if you are familiar with the word termite. Termite is that animal that eats the wood. Do you know that? Do you have that in Poland? No? Is it very tropical? So yeah, the greatest termites. I'm going to show you something very special in some minutes then. This very beautiful moment when the butterfly has the choice of flying and becoming what he or she wants to be. That is kind of what happens to the architects, the artists, and under my point of view at least, I think there is a moment in our professional life that we feel ready to do something different to get the environment in a best way. So many people have been trying to do this. So Buckminster Fuller that was doing some of this, and and then I thought, well, there is something very similar in all these things that I have been looking since I was a child. Most of these structures seem to spread in a very specific way through branches. So what do you see here? Do you see that each of the branches has another branch that has another branch? Why do you think this happens in nature so often? Do you have any ideas?
Because of conducting. The conductors need to transport, to move some elements which is necessary to life. Exactly.
So in the plants, the fluids, the food, let's say, the food and the drinks of the plant go through this. But in other cases, we also have something very special. So I'm going to go back in a second to this. This was also inspired by the leaves and the spider webs. So the bone. This is the bone. Is a little bit of the bone. It's a detail of the bone of a whale. So do you see how the structures are together there with the hollows? So you don't need sometimes to use so much more material to have something very nice that is lighter. You can carry that. So keep this image in mind when we get to the 3D printing, because sometimes people say, oh, 3D printing, you're going to waste so much more material, this is so expensive. You don't need really to spend so much more material than the basics if you are very clever when you are doing the design. So this is what the whales do, at least. So in the bamboo, how the bamboo grows. Some inspiration also from a mixture of the cocoons and the spider webs, the leaves of some animals. So this is in England. This is super nice if you have the time one day to go there. In each of these places there are examples of the biodiversity of a certain place. So it's super nice, and concerning the architecture, of course. So the branches, as I was saying, they help you, the plants, to get the food and to get everything they need. But concerning the economy in material, so you're going to save up material if you also use this in architecture. I don't know in Poland how your aesthetic sense works. So I think that people from these very young countries like Australia, Brazil, Argentina, we are more open, or in the Arabic world as well, we are probably more open to test new things. When I did one of my postdocs in Italy, and also my second doctorate, they were saying to me, "No, it's so nice. We already have everything we need. So let's work on the restoration of the old things." So of course, you know, I had to look for a supervisor that would understand my ideas. So you see, the architects emulate the nature at some point. I mean, they take this inspiration from the nature in different kinds of environments, and they transport this to our way of thinking and producing. This is something very specific from the Amazon. I'm almost sure nobody of you has seen this, you know, very close to you. So these are the plants that grow where there is a lot of water. So part of my work in my doctorate was to develop or at least try to start developing this system that people could have houses even when there are floods, for example. So you know, they are very smart, these plants. So when you know the currents are strong or they aren't, they continue getting away to live. So this happens through their aerial roots. Some more important movements, let's say broader movements. Do you remember we were talking about these structures that branch and brings food and all that? So it's not always that you're going to use this just for the support of structures and for, you know, the transportation of elements. You can also use this for reinforcement in specific places where you need them. So I don't know if it's, you know, clear to you. Do you see that this is the thing? Do you see this, that there is more space here and they are thicker, and here they are much thinner but there are more of them? So this is not, you know, a coincidence. This is for a very structural idea to improve the performance. So it's the same with this one. It's the same with this one. This one is very different. So why is it different? Any ideas from you? Why does it hang? Exactly, because of the gravity. But why the other plants, they wanted to have it, let's say, standing up, and this one, they just let the gravity do its job?
It's more heavy, maybe.
It could be heavier, but it's not always the case.
Different structure.
Yes, it's simply a different structure. So this allows more movement, and this movement can serve for other purposes. For example, we can get inspired by this, so that we have a concept of let's say, a house which has the ceiling and the walls a part of the same structure. We can think of this as a way of having a semi-privacy, so you don't see everything, but also it's not a block of a physical and visual block. So you can take part of this. After this one is super interesting, because this animal, they don't have a super simple structure, of course. It's simpler than you think, because it is in repetition, but it permits, with the kind of the very simple muscles it has, to help with changing the structure so that it moves and it's more resilient to the water flows too. So I started doing some studies of this. This is just a shell. so that I could understand how the branches take part even in the movement. So let's say do you have any idea what this is? This is a very simple thing. So who of this room thinks this is an animal? Who thinks Who thinks this is a gel? You? Who thinks it's plastic? No. Two people? Yes, this is plastic. So this is super simple. This is basically just a window. I took the picture of this window that has this plastic, this polymer that was covering it, and some little part of this plastic. There was the possibility of the air to come in, so it started to spread, and it was spreading. I took the pictures, of course I put just the first and the last one, but it took me a year to analyze this, and then just with the normal daily flow, it was spreading until it reached this form. And it's going to have relations with the 4D printing too. Everything, so I'm just getting you to the idea from the basics, okay? Or this structure that is so thin, you know, who didn't as a child play with the soap bubbles? Many times. I was a big fan of this. I continue to be a big fan of these things. I was also studying the movement of other sea animals. So I started diving to be in contact with these animals to do the best pictures and all that, so that I could understand the way of the movement, so that now I try to do things in a more feasible way in the 4D printing. This is in Brazil. We were talking about the structure of the water. That, you know, the water is so free, let's say, that it doesn't really configure a stable structure, but it really shows how the branches are also present even in the water. So it's, you see, this is over the Amazon too. And I was paying attention also to other animals outside the water and how, you know, if their behavior was changing or not. This was very important to me because, as you're going to see, if you didn't get any contact with the 4D printing yet, 4D printing reacts to the environment stimuli. So it can be the wind, it can be the water, the flow of water, it can be the humidity. So I wanted to see how animals react differently when they are in the presence of certain conditions and in the absence of certain conditions. So how the plants grow, how they can get packed very tight, and how they can also move more freely when, you know, they grow older. This is also another concept that we use in the 4D printing, because when we pack things very close one with each other, there are, for example, great savings in transportation, right? So this is very important for the future, that you are able to transport things in a very let's say, optimal performance way, instead of having everybody doing things for you. So then I started doing some installation arts and experiments. So I went to the lab, to the biological, to the biology school, and I was like, hey guys, I'm working on these patterns of nature. Can I do some testings here? So I was diving into this environment too. They were very nice. I love the biologists. They are super kind to me. So I do appreciate that. So you see, even in the very tiny structures of the cells of a given plant, You know, these patterns appear over and over and over. So, of course, there must be a reason for that. And a very cheap way to try this, well, sometimes not so cheap, but the cheapest way I could find to test this in a human scale was to doing some experiments. So emulating the spider webs, or new configurations of this artificial spider web and things like this. And while I was discussing also if the artificial life, up to what extent can we call something artificial life? If it's life, sometimes it does not really matter if it's artificial or not. So if it's working, if it reaches the purposes, it's all back to that discussion about the virus, that the virus are not real life, but they are affecting our lives. They are moving. So some very heavy discussions about these limits between life and no-life are back to the architectural stage via the 4D printing. So this is me in 2006, a little bit different. Some other tests. Oh, this was super nice. So this is an artist, Aaron Kings. He did this work in Australia. It was a summer festival. Everybody was helping, doing this, and then they had a great party. So this is a Japanese artist that was working also close to these relations of the scale in different kinds of structures in the nature, and the bones, and back to those things. And this is oh my, I forgot the name now. When the fishermen, they produce these nets. The material is super cheap, but this is the means for the way they can get the nice fishes and the seafood. So these very traditional techniques have been present in the humanity over many thousands of years. This is the Ecologic Studio. These two artists, they are teaching now at the AA in London, the architecture school in London. They were supervised by my second doctorate supervisor. So you see, everybody's crazy in this border between. And this was in the structural engineering department. So you see how crazy things can get. This was a trial of emulation, very, very simple. Do you remember I was telling you, do not try to do complicated things or imagine complicated things that sometimes you don't really get to the end. You start with something very basic, and from the insights you have, step by step you are going to build your building blocks, right? And then you get to something very complex. So when I was discussing this I used only the laser cut. I didn't have the contact with the 3D printing yet at this point. So I was trying to create new animals, a combination of animals from those studies of the movements of the animals I was telling you before. So I was creating my brand new projects of animals. And this one is from this is the happy moment when everybody jumped into this pool of artificial caviar, but this is a kind of gel that unfolds, so it's super small, super tiny, and then when we put water in it, it starts to get bigger also by the absorption of water, but mainly because of this unfolding. So it's closed and then it starts to change, to alter its configuration. So this is also a basis that I took into account when I started with the 4D printing. Some very simple studies I was doing with these silicone small creators I was trying, and then with different flows of water, which impact that would happen and which kind of pattern would be created in my artificial trials. This is a very small one. So one by one, I created all of them. Then I produced more than 1,000 of them. This is a chemical reaction that also you find the same kinds of patterns of these growing, branching patterns. So another exhibition with movement. This one is one of my favorite artists. This guy is called Philip Beasley. He's Canadian. He is teaching at the University of Waterloo. You see that, sometimes, I really want to be an artist, but I also want to talk to the students, to people. So, becoming a professor is a great choice. So this is super nice, because it emulates nature. This is the simpler version. This is a detail only, but that one I was showing you before. This that one really reacts to the environment, but it's not reacting to the environment as in the 4D printing. This is something very different. They use electricity. So how are we going to talk about sustainability in the future when we are spending a lot of natural resources for electricity, for example? Or for example, when people say, let's use, the solar energy. Well, solar energy is not that great either, because you're going to use some panels that are not the best for the environment either. And then people say, let's use strained from the wind. No, do you want one of those things in front of your house? No, nobody does, right? So my goal is also to think about very effective ways of giving movement to things that do not harm the environment so much. Right? Okay, I am aware that it's not going to be in my generation that this is going to be possible, but sometimes in the sciences things may take some hundreds of years to evolve, right? To the point that people were dreaming. So I am a dreamer. How many of you are familiar with the 3D printing? Most of you, some, okay? So I'm going to give you some very general, very, very super basic ideas. So you do the model. It can be in the CAD, or it can be via a scanner. And then you're going to transform it into, let's say, for example, that I have this bottle here. I designed this bottle, or even simpler, I designed this in the AutoCAD. I'm going to cut it in very fine layers. Imagine that this texture here are the layers. So if I cut these in the layers, and then I take them to the 3D printer, there are three ways of doing this. So it's via the solids, via the liquids, and via powder. But anyway, just to have a very general idea of it, then we would have this being deposited, the material, either one of these three, would be deposited a layer at the top of the other. So this is basically the simplest 3D printer you can find. They are super cheap now. I really hope you use as much as you can in the lab here. I've heard that the prices in Poland for the material are much cheaper than in other places of Europe or South America. So woo, Poland. and that the technologies and the materials that are possible, they vary. So, Neri Oxman from the MIT, some of my works to study the termite mounds. So these are the termites I was telling you. These ones are in Africa, that they are built super huge like this. The termites are that animals that they eat the wood I was telling you. Not only the wood, they are pretty bad animals. No, they're good. I love them. So you see, the interior has these branches that connect one with the other. And then some 4D experiments. So this, for example, this structure, that it should be very simple when it's flat, but a combination of the material, it's what we can be called smart material, and also and mainly due to the precise way that the project is done, under shaking, basically just shaking, so it's the movement, the kinetic energy, it can be transformed into this structure here. So it's the same, if you are thinking of, this is the most basic one, so it's just a thread, this kind of the same thread that you use for many other purposes, but then this one was in the water. So this guy is the Skylar Tibbett from the MIT. So when he was developing this, I was in contact with him, we were exchanging ideas. This was great, and also you can do for the cubes. So, for example, maybe in the future, the new houses or the new cars, the new bicycles. The bicycles are quite more easy to, be feasible within some years. And for the fashion, so for the fashion, this is also very used, the 4D printing. So you see how it works when it's designed, but then, according to the movement created, it is something different. And also to the amount of material that you want, according to the kind of design you want, you see that the shape, these are bigger, smaller, bigger here, smaller here. So this great variety of things are done within some minutes. And do you remember I was telling you about the folding that, So here, the only way to print it because this is printed at once, is not that they print every single tiny bit and they are put together. The printer prints the whole dress. So, this is the fashion of the future, right? Not so much of the future, because they are already for sale now. So, in the movement, in the folding, so you see that the connections are super well prepared. So there are many comparative, okay, I'm going to pass this because I talked too much. How to get things done. So discover natural models, abstract the patterns and principles. So how are the principles of the nature working for each of your examples? Identify potential applications, emulate by playing and design, so have fun while you are doing this. Define operating parameters and conditions. So what are the conditions? The conditions when it's raining, when it's not raining, when it's, it moves or it doesn't move. How do you want it to be done? The functions of it. So does it going to serve for other purposes, or is just for experiment, for the beauty of it? And then you evaluate. So last advice of the day is spend 99% of your time making, instead of just thinking about things that would never eventually be done. Okay? So 2 minutes for questions.
How about materials for 4D print? When we have 3D printer, I believe it's the same as a 4D printer, but the difference is in the material. So what kind of material we should use to get this effect?
So this is one of the great topics of the high level material science challenges. We have, for example, a combination of something that would get the structure thicker, and then at the top of it we could use gels, we could use alloys, any kind of smart materials that would react to the environment can be tested. So it depends really on what kind of purpose you're going to intend. And I would love to continue this discussion with you further. One more question. So I hope to talk to you via email, Facebook, WhatsApp, and of that. It was a great pleasure to be here talking to you, and I hope to talk to you soon. Bye bye.
Thank you.